Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Title Scoop. So this week we are talking about Lis Pendens. I have had an increase in questions about Lis Pendens, and I think with the way the market is right now, we're seeing an increase in foreclosures in some areas. So I do think we're going to see more Lis Pendens filed on properties. So I thought it would be a good topic just to review. So first things first, what is a Lis Pendens? Well, if you translate it, it actually means pending suit, which makes sense. And in some states, it is called some other things. So I have seen notice of commencement action, notice of pendency action. So it just depends on your state, but it does mean the same thing. What does it do? It actually provides constructive notice, basically pursuant to whatever state you're in. So whatever that state law is, that there is a lawsuit that has been filed and it could affect the interest in the real property that you're looking at, right? So if you have a Lis Pendens filed on the property, this Lis Pendens is giving constructive notice that this suit has been filed. And again, it could affect the interest in the property. Now, is it a lien? Technically, no. However, again, it is constructive notice that a possible interest is being claimed in that real property. So we can't ignore it. We've got to do something about it. So if you have a Lis Pendens filed of record, what does it really mean? Again, I know I keep saying this, but it's really notice. And that's to pretty much anyone. That could be a subsequent purchaser. It could be a creditor, an encumbrancer, any third party who happens to be looking at that property, they would have noticed that this Lis Pendens is out there. It also establishes priority of the claim of interest in the land. So once it's filed, they're establishing their priority. And then last, once it is of record, anyone who acquires an interest in that property, if that Lis Pendens is not handled prior to the conveyance, they are buying it subject to or obtaining the property subject to this Lis Pendens. So that's just something that you do need to be aware of. They don't just disappear. So what should be included in a Lis Pendens as far as like technically as to form? So each state has specific requirements. So you're going to want to look at your state law if you want to know technically if the form is proper, but you're going to have things like you're going to have the parties to the action, the legal description of the property that's affected or potentially affected. Sometimes it will even say what kind of case it is. So you'll know, okay, this is a foreclosure, pending foreclosure. So again, it's dependent on state. What I would say is don't just remove it because you don't think it's technically correct, because it still could be providing constructive notice even if the form is incorrect, and we don't want to take that risk. So if you're not sure if you could remove it as to the form, which again, I don't know that I've ever removed as to form, call your underwriter, have us look at it so that we could see what we think. We're probably going to want to look at the corresponding case to determine kind of what's going on with it and whether it can be removed or not. So that's a great segue into what do we do if we have a Lis Pendens filed on the property? Well, generally we're going to want a release, right? We don't want that of record. We don't want it to be a cloud on the chain. But if you can't get a release, maybe it's going to go away by operation of law. Maybe your state says if a Lis Pendens has been filed and it's been 10 years, it expires. Maybe you can look at the corresponding case and see that the case was actually dismissed, in which case the Lis Pendens would go away. So you'll just need to know your state law, what the requirements are, what you can do as far as release. I have seen, I believe there's a couple states that actually require an expungement of the Lis Pendens. I have not had to do that personally, but I do know that that is one of the solutions to get rid of it on a property if you're having trouble getting it released. Last, if you can't get it released or if it's not terminated by operation of law, you can always put it as an exception, and the person who's buying the property could take it subject to. If you do that, you're just going to put the exception. You're going to outline the Lis Pendens, when it was dated, when it was filed, the recording information, and then you want to put something like any claims or rights that may be evidenced by either judgments or orders rendered pursuant to the Lis Pendens. Just something to basically say, hey, you guys are taking this subject to this Lis Pendens, and FYI, there may be a judgment that could affect your property. So that is it for Lis Pendens. If you guys have questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll call it a day and we will see you next week.